I'm going to start this review of the 2024 Nosferatu off by reading the IMDb plot summary, which says, a gothic tale of obsession between a haunted young woman and a terrifying vampire infatuated with her, causing untold horror in its wake. What is Nosferatu? So if you've never heard of this outside of maybe the SpongeBob episode that Nosferatu appeared in, Nosferatu is a 1922 movie, I believe, of the same name that was created really as kind of a knockoff Dracula. It was used a lot of, similar aspects to the novel Bram Stoker's Dracula. It did change some things, such as Count Orlok in this movie being Orlok instead of Dracula, things of that nature. But it was actually similar enough that this is something I didn't realize until I was doing research for this video. But it was sued by the heirs of Bram Stoker's Dracula, and they won that lawsuit. The 1922 movie was declared to be destroyed. However, it managed to survive that. Some copies just happened to survive, and it eventually became the classic that it is known as today. My personal experience with Nosferatu is not a historic one. As I mentioned, I kind of learned stuff just researching this today. I am someone who watched Nosferatu, the original Nosferatu, in the 1922 one this year. So I watched it because I knew that there was a Robert Eggers movie coming out, and I wanted to see wanted to see the first one before I saw the new one. This is not the first time this movie has been made, but I will say, if you are a Robert Eggers fan, this is his movie. Like this, I've seen both films, and while I definitely would say a lot of the plot elements are the same, even some I was kind of joking about, do you think this will be a plot element in this movie? Were a plot element in this movie, but a lot of stuff is added, and Robert Eggers, who I think is really, fantastic. I think that, this is his movie. I'm someone who really likes Robert Eggers. Even The Northman, which I think had some more mixed reviews, I was a big fan of. I put it on my top 10 list of that year. And then I think, everyone thinks The Lighthouse is great. I think The Lighthouse is great. And The Witch is awesome too. So, I'm a big fan of Robert Eggers and what he can do. I think this movie, though, feels like kind of the, I don't know, this feels like what his entire career has been working towards to this point. He has said that this has kind of been a passion project for him for a while. He wanted to get this off the ground, and it feels like that. It feels like this is something that he kind of had ironed out before he even started writing the script, almost, or at least certainly before he started storyboarding and getting ready for the filming of the movie. It's a film that hits the ground running with a lot of, I think, interesting editing, a lot of at times a quick editing, which I think really works to this, works for this movie. Although definitely Robert Eggers, if you saw The Northman, he loves his long takes, and he'll put those in there for a while as well. A lot of dialogue scenes might only have one shot or two shots in them, and then it's just the characters talking. And I should mention as well, because I think there might end up being some people who go in a little disappointed, just in the sense of there is a lot of dialogue in this movie. This is like I said, it's very similar to the plot of the first one. There is a lot of setup, a lot of vampire lore that this movie dives into, and while that stuff was never my favorite, I was never really bored during that stuff either, and to me it was totally worth it to get the other stuff, to get the set pieces, the genre set pieces that you get with a film like this. I was lucky enough to get it in, so we haven't, near where I live, there's an IMAX screen, but it's obviously this isn't IMAX, it's that kind of projection, so it's built for IMAX, and so I made sure I went out to see it in the Limax, whatever you want to call it, which is what I would recommend. See this in the biggest screen possible, see this with the best sound design possible, because it is very much an experience. It reminded me in many ways of Barbenheimer from a couple years ago. Was that last year? Yeah, last year, where it just felt like, it was a packed crowd, and it just felt like this was in a movie experience just as much as it was the film itself. I think the strength of this film, there's so many strengths. It's hard to say the one strength of this film. Some of the strengths of this film, first, I already mentioned it, but Robert Eggers, some of the camera work going on in this, which isn't just him, of course, he has a cinematographer, but some of the camera work and the way, the shots that are getting, shown here, and how, it uses a lot of times shadows to tell its story, which of course there was a famous shadow sequence in the first one. This kind of expands on that, but not just even with the creepy fingers shadow stuff, like just regular shadows, in regular scenes, using kind of darkness as a way to to help build atmosphere for this movie. This film is not shot exclusively in black and white. There are some colors in this, although it is so drawn out and so much of the film is black and white. It almost feels as though, you know how if you've been in the dark for a while and then your eyes start to adjust to the dark and now you can see better in the dark? It kind of feels like that's what happens in this movie, is you can kind of see it's like that's how you're watching it. It feels like you're in the darkness while you're watching it. I also got to give a shout out to the cinematography by Jaron Bushkicki. I'm not sure exactly how you say his name, so apologizes there. Wanted to give him a shout out, but names are hard. I struggle with them. But again, the look of this it almost reminds me of Poor Things in the sense of like, this is a movie that I haven't seen another movie look like. Even though I've literally seen another movie that, was this story, the looks of this movie at times felt almost like video game-like in certain scenes. There was so many unique shots, and I think that is, again, one of the key strengths of this movie. The other thing we have to mention is the acting, which is, it's so frustrating that some genre films can get attention at the Oscars and some can't, right? The amount of just technical achievement that this film is that's just not going to get talked about because it's horror is really unfortunate, but doesn't mean we can't give people credit when they deserve it. Lily Rose Depp is kind of the standout here because she has to play someone who is possessed at several instances, and you're not actually possessed. You have to pretend that with your facial expressions, and she does an incredible job at that. Nicholas Hoult, who I thought was also, I've never been like a huge Nicholas Hoult guy, I guess. I liked him in Mad Max Fury Road, but I think part of it too is I think he's just good at playing like a guy who's kind of a dick, right? Like in The Menu, he's kind of good at that role. But like he's supposed to be unlikable, so like he's doing his job well. I think he's a good actor, but he's great in this. He's fantastic. I've heard he's good in Juror number 2 too. I need to see that one, but yeah, he deserves a ton of credit as well. Again, there's so much great stuff going on here. And also, I'll give a shout out to Bill Skarsgård as well, who he plays Count Orlok here. So, he's doing a good job at playing some of these, because he was the monster in It, the clown in It as well. He was in Barbarian, and it's funny because apparently he doesn't even like horror movies, which I always find kind of a funny little tidbit. But yeah, we'll give him a shout out as well for this. He's found an interesting career for himself. I could see some critics of the movie calling this style over substance, and definitely, I think Robert Eggers in general, the one criticism that he's had over his career, I would say, is that a lot of times that is a bit of the case. I'm going to make a weird comparison that I doubt anyone else would make, but I can almost see some, like, James Cameron vibes with him, just in the sense that, like, a lot of times it's, let's find a simpler story with simpler characters, and then we can put all of our effort into the style and all to the other stuff. So that's obviously what Cameron does, I think, to an even bigger extent in the Avatar movies. I tend to enjoy Robert Eggers' movies more, but I think you can argue a similar thing, although I would say there was enough substance in here for me as well. While it is a bit of an old-timey story, and I think if that's not your thing, then it's not your thing, but I think the substance still, like, I would have watched this movie and enjoyed it if it wasn't for the style. But the style is the movie. That's part of the film, is the style, and the style is awesome, and that's what I loved about this movie. So horror has been it's been a disappointing year for me, quite frankly. A lot of movies that I was really excited to see going into it, I ended up being disappointed by. Maxine, I wasn't that, impressed with. A lot of the other horror movies, I ended up kind of feeling like they were sometimes good, but maybe not great. Even The Substance, which everyone was losing their mind over, I wasn't fully invested, although I think that was really well made and still enjoyed it. I just wasn't as crazy about it as some other people seem to be. So I've been let down horror movie after horror movie this season. So what will almost certainly be the last horror movie I see in theaters this year. I'm really happy to say I was not let down at all. In fact, I went in with really high expectations, and this didn't just meet those expectations. It crushed those expectations out of the water. If you can't tell, I love this movie. It is my first 10 out of 10 I'm giving this year. Absolutely a blast. Weird that it came out on Christmas, because I should mention, the thing I should say as well is, maybe not the one to see with your parents, right? This is, again, Robert Eggers' movie. Know that going in. There's some stuff in here. That's all I'll say. But just know that going in. Should you see Nosferatu? Again, I think you know who you are. If you like creepy stuff, this kind of crazy horror movie type of thing, then yes, you should rush to see it. If you're kind of someone who is like, I'm not crazy about horror stuff, but like I've heard this one has good reviews, you're probably not going to be crazy about this one. I would also say you'll probably know in the first minute if this is your thing or not. I think that quickly you can figure out if you'll like it or not. So I don't know, maybe wait till it's on digital and if you're on defense and do that. But I would say if this is something that you think you might be interested in, make sure you see it in theaters, because it's a great experience there. So yeah, those are my thoughts. What are yours? Let me know in the comments below. Always love hearing from you. And of course, as always, thanks for watching.